Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. And you've heard me talk about it, and if you haven't, then where have you been? So I have a really special guest. All my guests are special, but this one is really super special, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So in the Gay with God house today, we have an award-winning and Billboard-charting artist, Flamy Grant. Flamy Grant is a shame-slaying, hip-swaying, singing-songwriter drag queen from Western North Carolina. Her 2022 debut record, Bible Belt Baby, was nominated for Best Pop Album at the San Diego Music Awards, and she is the winner of the 2023 Kerrville Folk Festival New Folk Competition. Both a powerhouse vocalist and an intrepid songwriter, Flamy blends the art of drag with her iconic folk rock sound to create a memorable musical experience. Flamy is the first drag performer to appear on Christian music charts with both her song Good Day and her album Bible Belt Baby, reaching #1 on iTunes, the latter staying at the top of the for 9 consecutive days. Additionally, Good Day debuted at #20 on Billboard's Christian digital sales charts. Now, y'all know that I have shared this song as many places as I could possibly share Good Day, and I now have claimed this as my personal anthem. So just so you know, now the person who wrote and performed this wonderful song that speaks to me on a very deep level is in the Gay with God house. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Flamy has collaborated with Adeem the Artist, Jennifer Knapp, Semler, and Derek Webb, in addition to playing the New Folk Winners Showcase at the 2023 Kerrville Folk Music Festival, and has played at my beloved Wild Goose Festival in North Carolina, San Diego Pride's SheFest, and is headlining Blount County Pride in East Tennessee this September. Now, was that this past September or okay, this past? So she's already done it. You missed it. Get up with the calendar. We got to stay updated with calendar. It's no accident that Flamy's drag name is an homage to our beloved Amy Grant, the undisputed queen of Christian music and 90s chart-topping pop artist. Much of Flamy's music centers on the queer spiritual journey, telling stories of resilience and recovery from religious trauma in a world where LGBTQ plus people are frequently ignored by, harmed in, or rejected from religious spaces. With a bold lip, a big lash, and a blistering voice, Flamy drags audiences to a soulful, uplifting church of her own making. This down-to-earth diva has entertained music lovers from Los Angeles to Nashville with her funny, frank, and fabulous songs, and she is in the house today. So, Flamy, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the details.
Well, I'm all about the details, and I can't wait to hear yours. So when I invited you here, the reason that I wanted you here, even though we're not, I mean, you and I can see each other, and it does record a video. It's only on audio, but I wanted you here because when I heard that song, Good Day, when you talked about being on the front pew and that you'd been at Outcast, and I'm like, that's it, because me going back to church was such a huge experience for me. And, you know, this podcast, writing my memoir, and I have in my memoir that instead of calling it Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story, it was really going to be Gay with God, Returning to the Pew Without Puking, because I was scared to death to go back to church and go through any of that again. So your Good Day song brought it was like my journey, feeling like I was excommunicated, and I returned, and I am bold to say I will be on the front pew. And it's just such a great song. So let me just say that everything you're doing, I follow you on social media. You get a lot of flack, you get a lot of ugliness coming at you, and it just always surprises me how we as a community are almost expected to just roll with it and put up with it because, you chose that, or you decided to be outspoken about your life. And we know that's not fair. So I know you get a lot of flack, and I'm just holding you in love and space every day for what you go through and how bold you are and how brave you are. Have I gushed enough? Have I gushed over you?
You definitely have. Thank you. I do get plenty of the flack, but I think it's important to point out that I get much more
Yay.
support,
Yay.
much more love, like far and away. The DMs, the comments that I get,
Mm-hmm.
it's a heavily weighted scale in favor of
Oh,
people who are here for it, happy about it, loving it, exactly everything that you just talked about. And
yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that's important to note.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that you feel like Good Day, is
Mm.
your story, your anthem,
Mm-hmm.
because it is. That song. That's one of the few times I really entered the magic space of songwriting where I just fully kind of blacked out. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember writing the song. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
waking up and having it. And
Wow.
and that happened after an evening spent in a queer small group at the church I was attending at the time that I didn't really want to be at. I I went in and was representing as I was leading music at the church. I was leading worship at that church, but kind of maybe keeping things at an arm's length at the time. I was really struggling
Mm-hmm.
with the term Christian and really struggling with the idea that, you know, that I actually even wanted to be in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to this queer small group and um, was amazed at the stories I heard that night
Mm-hmm.
from the people around me, and every single one
Mm-hmm.
of them had something to say about why they stay and
Mm-hmm.
what gives them the motivation and the strength, honestly, to
Mm-hmm.
stick around in a space that is, as you've said,
Mm-hmm.
super unwelcoming and super
Mm-hmm.
super difficult for us. So
Mm-hmm.
they all said, I'm here because if I leave, I leave a void, I leave a
Mm-hmm.
vacuum, and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
filled with
Mm-hmm.
more of this
Mm-hmm.
queerphobic, hateful,
Mm-hmm.
ignorant,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't say that as an insult, but truly ignorant, like people who
Yeah.
just don't know what queerness is, don't know who we are, don't
Yes.
know, or don't understand our culture, all of it.
Right.
And so I stay so that I'm representing in that space, and so that the next generation of kids coming up have a have something to see that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing to look at in the Christian
Yeah.
world to show me that I could be queer and Christian and loved and all of these things. So
Mm-hmm.
that really is like our story. That is
Yes.
that is that is the queer Christians,
Yes.
the ones who choose to stay. That's our story.
Yeah.
And while I'm on the topic, I will just say I do not think that every person should stay. I don't
Yeah.
think that. I think that it can be really hard to heal in the place where the harm happened,
Yeah.
and that for many of us, I would never want anybody to feel like I'm out here saying, "Oh, you should stay and occupy space in Christianity." Girl, if you got to go, you got to go. You got to put yourself first. You got to take care of yourself.
Yes.
Um, some of us have the personality makeup to make it work. I'm definitely one of those people. I get the feeling you are too, and
Yes.
and and yeah, but that's not. Some of us need to go fly, girl.
I'm so glad you said that because people have always said, I can't be on your podcast because I'm not gay. I
Hmm.
identify as trans, or I don't, I'm not gay, or I'm gay, but I don't go to church. I don't have a faith. And I'm like, that's the whole point. The only reason I named this Gay with God was because I was finally able to use the word God again after not feeling that I was an abomination or that I was going straight to hell for being gay. So it was my
Hmm.
homage back to me reclaiming what was my faith. And I so totally agree with you. Nobody has to return to their faith. Nobody has to have a certain faith. It is all about what's right for you. And what is your story? Where did you land? And did you land on the side of not being identified as Christian because of the religious abuse? And
Hmm.
is it just too painful? And the only reason that I wanted to write the memoir was to show people who are still dying and killing themselves because they think they're going to hell. My story was, I want you to know you don't have to. And
Hmm.
it's not a lot of, what do you call it? Research. There's no research evidence in my book. It's all about just my story. So
Hmm.
you tell your story in song and I tell my story in words, but we're both coming from a place of hurt and going to now a place of healing. And I
Hmm.
think, I don't know about you, but I'm in such a good space right now, but still some of those comments make you almost take your breath away. And it's like, whoa, there really is
Yeah.
there really is hurt and hate out here. So growing up in Western North Carolina, I'm getting the impression that you're going to church as a young person, if that's what you did, was
Hmm.
hurtful. Can you tell us a little bit about the early messages you may have gotten about gay people in church? Some churches, didn't even talk about it, but most churches did have something to say.
Yeah. Mine was one of the ones that didn't.
Okay.
I don't remember it being addressed publicly from the pulpit ever.
Wow.
Not until I was 30 something and had been gone from that church for a long time. I went back and I was visiting my mom. I surprised my mom on her birthday weekend and went back home. And at the time I was living in San Diego and flew home, surprised mom. My siblings were both there, so all three of her kids were there, and we all decided that we would go to church with mom. Like kind of do that as just for her birthday. Like let her have all her kids in church with her one time again for the first time in probably well over a decade. Um, and we did, and I think it because we were there because my brother is gay, I'm queer, my sister is identifies as queer as well. Um, I think that the speaker changed tack mid sermon and actually
Wow.
started addressing
Oh,
homosexuality by name from the pulpit, and it was the first time in that church I'd ever actually heard it spoken. So
wow.
that was wild.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't mean just because I didn't hear it, as a sermon topic growing up,
Mm.
it doesn't mean the messaging wasn't there. And it certainly was. I was queer from the day I was born. Like I had all of the impulses to, defy the expectations that were placed on me
Mm.
because of the gender I was being raised as. And I learned real early and real quickly that in order to belong in that
Mhm.
space, which
Mhm.
it's not actual belonging if there are conditions, is it? But
Mhm. Mhm. Good
but
point.
in order to belong in that space, I had to perform a gender
Mm.
that wasn't natural for me.
Mm.
And so everything from like getting in trouble for messing with my mom's makeup or trying on her clothes, um to the message, the subtle messaging of like stop playing with your sister's Barbies, like that's not for you, here's a truck. Why don't you try out for sports, Matthew? Let's go try out for basketball this year. All the things that I had no interest in, and I was like, I
Mhm.
just want to be the theater and music kid, please, can I just do that? And those
Mhm.
things, it's not that they weren't encouraged as well, but um the messaging was pretty, it wasn't explicit, but it was still clear.
Mm.
You can get a point across without saying, um of Matthew, we're afraid you're gay and we've got to change that.
Right, right. Yeah, it's all the deflections, all the that's not quite right.
Hmm.
Can't quite
Yeah.
do it that way.
Yeah, and the protecting me from um exposure to
Mm.
anything in queer culture.
Ah.
Not that my family or my church knew anything about queer culture, but they knew what to keep me from, right?
Mhm.
Because I think uh, implicitly they understand that if I were to see myself represented in the world and to see queerness thriving and to see queerness doing well, like I would then know that there's a place for me in the world, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I was very intentionally kept from, um, we lived in focus on the family world. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of our entertainment was provided by, rubber stamp Christian approved organizations like Focus on the Family, and
Uh-huh.
our local Christian bookstore is the only place I was allowed to buy music. So I wasn't allowed to watch a whole lot of TV. So it was very um, protected from seeing myself represented in the world.
So how did you get to be Flamy Grant?
Well,
That was a bold move.
it took a good it took a good 40 years. I mean, I didn't start drag until I was 37,
Wow.
and because of the pandemic, to be frank, I had the time for the first time in my life to, explore this thing that started as a hobby, started as just something I was doing for myself,
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting with the kid that had those impulses that I had, subsequently suppressed for
Yeah.
decades,
Mm.
and letting that kid have the fantasy that they wanted to have, just
Mm-hmm.
literally in my bedroom, painting my face, learning to style wigs from YouTube tutorials, like that
Oh,
kind of thing. Yeah.
that's so cool.
And yeah, that's how I spent those early days. Everybody else was, sourdough starters and Tiger King, and I was, learning to paint my face.
So
But
go ahead.
oh
Finish that
no,
thought.
you please. I
Oh,
didn't really have one.
oh, you did. But you sold me on it. Well, I'm just okay. So there's that gap of I'm in church. I'm listening to Christian music. I'm doing everything that my family's doing. There are three people in your family who are gay, identified queer, and with parents that did everything they possibly could to make sure everybody was in line with what they believed would be
Mhm.
safe for you
You might
and
even say we were groomed or indoctrinated to be
yes, that
straight.
that would be a word. Yes,
Hmm.
and it is. I think we all are in some form or fashion as young people. So, what did you pursue as you got through school, as you were looking at your careers? What was the thought that you had that you would be, even though you knew something else was churning?
Do you mean like what? How did I cope? Like.
Yeah, how did you cope with that churning? And then if you couldn't be like if you had been allowed to go into the theater, if you had been
Hmm.
allowed to do all of those things, you might have started your entertainment career earlier. If you had not
Hmm.
been indoctrinated to be straight, you could have maybe come out as a young teen
Oh yeah.
knowing that they were gay. So how did that suppression affect you, and what path were you starting to take until the pandemic? Well,
Well, I'd been on this journey for a long time. I mean, late bloomer is a theme in my life for
mhm,
sure, not just with this, but with a lot of things. And I directly attribute all of that late blooming to my upbringing and the evangelical way of life, frankly.
mhm,
But I had in my 20s were basically a decade of coming out, right? So when I first came out, it was to a friend in college, and it was I pointed to Romans 1 in the Bible and said, "This is what I struggle with." I couldn't say the word gay,
uh-huh,
and eventually I was able to like tell people, well, I struggle with same-sex attraction, but I'm trying to change. I self-enrolled in Exodus. I did conversion therapy for 5 years. I planted a church in San Diego in 2006 with a team of people, and no, 2000, yeah, 2006, sorry. And during that time was when I was really going through my journey, looking into the Bible. What does the Bible actually say? What have I how have I been lied to? What have I inherited? Those kinds of things.
mhm,
What we now call deconstruction, but at the
mhm,
time I just was like, is this apostasy? Am I apostasy? Am I an apostate?
mhm,
And by the time I turned 28, I was finally ready to say, well, I'm gay. I've tried changing it. That's not going to work. I've tried the single and celibate thing. But at the end of the day, I feel like I've learned that I'm not condemned. There's no condemnation for me. And I want to live a life that looks more like what most people get, which is to
mhm,
have a partner, to love and be loved, and to live unburdened from the weight of
mhm,
feeling like I've got a thorn in my flesh that I have to deal with.
mhm,
So I, you know, fully was out at 28, started dating, then got kicked out of the church that I helped start because of that. And from there, moved into more progressive churches slowly and hesitantly. Like I said, I struggled with the idea of even calling myself a Christian for a long time. Still do, to be frank. And but yeah, I by the time pandemic had rolled around, I had 5 years of a podcast called Heathen under my belt, where I was talking with people, much like we're doing right now, about their deconstruction journeys, about finding spiritual practices that work for them, that make them feel whole and safe and seen. And so really, I was kind of primed, when I had all of that time. I had fallen in love with drag in the few years prior, and I was like, let's go, let's paint my face and let's see what happens. And I genuinely, truly never imagined that there would be a career in this for me, that I would have a whole second act of life that is just looks wildly different from the first half of my life, right? I've been a worship leader. I've worked in nonprofit communications, marketing communications, for like theaters and animal service organizations and that kind of thing. And now here I am, a full-time entertainer, musician, songwriter, who just happens to do it in drag. So
yes. So
big pivot.
It's a big pivot. And how did your family take it?
Well, it depends on which one you ask.
Okay.
I mean, my siblings are obviously thrilled and on board and love it. I have some aunts and uncles who are on board and love it. Even a couple cousins, actually, well, yeah, quite a few cousins who are good. And then, another half that are all in various stages of, well, we don't talk about it, we don't address it, or if we do, like, they make it very clear where they stand, that kind of thing. So it's a spectrum within my family of where people are.
So you're not really free to show up as a drag child of God at Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh no, that would be probably a step too far for many in the family. Also very uncomfortable for me. I wouldn't want to eat like gravy with my sequins on.
Well, and I think that's interesting, that balance of knowing how you feel inside and how you like to express yourself in the exterior world with your job and with your career, and then there's the side of you that's just you, that's not the performer, and you're the brother, the sister, the son, and is that a hard shift for you to go from being mailed when you are female as your performer? I mean,
yeah, well, part of what drag has done for me is help me, identify my gender expression, which is non-binary. So I go by they, them now. And I don't, I don't like son, I don't like brother, like I like sibling, I like child. So it's that, even that is, for sure a point of tension within the family, and one that I think you have to like stand up for yourself, obviously, and at the same time, like, for me, I feel like it's important for me to like live in reality and like manage my expectations based on what I know is possible in the current present moment. So I'm not the kid who's gonna like correct my family at every turn when I get misgendered or anything like that. I'm going to, maybe we'll make it clear one time, and if things continue, for me, again, this is like my approach, how I handle it. I'm okay with, certain family members, ones that I have a stronger relationship with. I'm okay with like letting them take their time to get to where they need to be, because it took me time. It took me years. So yeah, we're all on our journeys. and I like to think that I can give them a little bit of space to accommodate their journey. because I know that it helped me when people gave me time and space.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's absolutely right because, I tell people it took me 30 years to be able to say that I was gay, and I can't
Hmm.
expect for somebody to embrace me the minute I tell them that I am,
Yeah.
because they are not on the train. They haven't lived what I lived, and they've been clueless up until this point. No, not necessarily clueless. I mean, my mother had inklings before I did. She would ask me
Mm,
all through high school if I was gay. And I'm like,
mm,
no, with what I was taught in church, no, I can't be
yeah.
that. No, I'm not that. And I went on my journey and she kept asking me. And then when I was ready to tell her, she instinctively just stopped asking. And I'm like, well, that's not
Mm,
fair. I was waiting for the very next question I was going to tell her.
right.
She wouldn't ask it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, well.
Yeah. I think yeah. There is an intuitive thing there. I think my mom knew as well. I know she did because she, when I did finally come out, she was like, "Well, I've wondered your whole life," and I think it was that fear of what my answer would be that probably stopped her from asking
Mm-hmm.
as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to feel like a disappointment when we know that they all had expectations of who we were. They had it set in stone. When you're pregnant, I think you have like you plan out your child's life, and they
yeah,
got all these big
totally.
expectations. And I always felt like I somehow didn't meet their expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to know that, well, the only expectation I need to meet for me is mine and God's, and
Yes.
I've aligned myself with what I believe is my ministry, and it is an ordained ministry, whether I'm an ordained person or not. I've been guided and brought along this path to be able to be
Yeah.
a light, and it's for whoever wants to take that light, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not up to them. It never was.
It's not up to them. Yes. I think the blunt truth of it is that we are disappointments, right? We did not
Mm,
meet the expectations that were
right,
set for us. So we have
right.
disappointed those
Yes.
people. But here's what I think we need to do. I think we need to normalize being a disappointment. Normalize it. It is okay to disappoint people who have expectations on you
Yes.
that you weren't built to meet, that you were not intended to
Right.
meet, you weren't created to meet, you are not designed to meet, and you don't want to meet.
Right. Right.
Normalize that. Like it is
Right.
okay to be a disappointment to people who put those expectations on you.
Yeah,
You don't
because
have to
it's
live up to that.
yeah, and they never needed to do that because it's not your business who I
Hmm.
am. It's not your
Yeah.
business. Yeah. Wow. So
You know
so
the
go
Well, I,
ahead.
I was just going to say the I'm dealing right now with a lot of online chatter and backlash for
Mhm.
some things that have happened in recent weeks. And the few times I choose to engage in a serious way, which I usually don't, usually I have fun with it and I'm just cheeky and like
Yeah.
I appreciate the boost that these people are giving me in the algorithm, right? Like
Yes.
the more
Yes.
they comment on my video, the more people are going to see it. So thanks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but when I do choose to engage in a serious way, I almost always find us landing in a place of me saying, well, I don't believe in your version of God. I'm not beholden to you. You don't get to have a say in my life and how
Mhm.
I choose to behave or whatever. And then they come back and say, well, I may not get to have a say in your life, but God does.
Yeah.
Like they always land on judgment day is coming. You'll be held accountable for all of this, blah blah. And like I understand that in their mindset, that is a comfort to
Yes.
them. That's
Yes.
a comfort to when they find out they can't control us, right? When their rules
Mhm.
and their expectations, when we are okay with being a disappointment, when we finally reach that like level of understanding, when I'm okay with disappointing you and you have to acknowledge that you have no power over me, then they
Mhm.
fall back into that, well, God will judge you.
Mhm.
And you know I understand the impulse, but what's happening in that exchange is that person is still managed by their fear, right? They have not learned to control their fear. They are controlled by it.
Mhm.
And for me, they look at it as I'm the one who's taking a big gamble, a big risk, right? Like,
Mhm.
fine, if you want to gamble eternity, a potential a potential eternity of suffering and torment, that's your choice. You get to do that. I'm gonna rest secure over here, knowing that like I'll be with God in heaven at the end of all this. Um, but at the end of the day, we each of us, what we both have is purely and exclusively our conviction, our belief.
Right.
We don't have facts. We don't know what's happening. And I'm sorry, you can spin it all you want. You can talk about the you can Lee Strobel your way into this all you want and say like the case for Christ, and we know, but at the end of the day, it's what you've chosen to believe. The difference between us is I'm choosing my belief based on what's here and now and the actual experience in front of me, right? At the end of all this, if at the very end of all this, at least I know that I gave myself a life where I could be happy, where I could be fulfilled, be whole, express the full range of my creativity, of my being, do that here and now, because we don't know what's coming next. Maybe there's an even greater like next level to all of this existence where we get to like expand even more. Maybe they're right. Maybe there is a hell. Maybe what I'm doing right now in this life is going to earn me a spot in hell. But you know what? If that's true, and there is a God who is willing to eternally torture their creations, I want nothing to do with that God anyway. So either way, I am basing the way I choose to live my life based on the here and now and my expression right now. On their end, they're choosing to base their existence here on something they can't know about what's coming next. And so maybe they're depriving themselves here. Maybe they are making quote unquote sacrifices here and not living authentically and not being their full selves and not experiencing the full range of their creativity. And what if they're wrong? What if they get to the next level and like they squandered their life?
Yes.
To me, that's the bigger gamble.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones taking the risk. And I guess at the end of the day, I'm willing to give a middle finger to the God who creates an eternal torment for people. Like that's fine with me. I will go there and gladly and willingly, because I don't want anything to do with that God. God for me has to be able to love at least as well as I can love, if not better, right?
Oh yeah.
If there's a God, that God has to be able to love at least as much as I can. And you know what? I can love my enemies. I have been able to access that part of myself.
Good for you.
Occasionally, on occasion,
let's not get crazy with it.
Let's not get crazy. Let's not be deceived. Let's not say I just walk around hugging everyone who comes for me in the comment section.
Yeah, especially that minister.
But I can. I'm able to like pull back enough and remove myself enough to look at the situation and understand the pain that they're coming from and the hurt that they're dealing with and the fear that rules them. And in that way, I'm able to love that person and feel sympathy and compassion for them. If God can't do that, then that's not a God.
Right.
I don't know what that is, but that's not a God, and certainly not one that I would want to worship or give my life to.
Right. And thankfully, I don't think we have to. I do believe
neither. At the end of the day, of course.
At the end of the day. And I believe you hit on the topic that I always talk about, is the fear that we felt, fearing that we would go to hell, that there is condemnation for being gay. And those folks who are attacking you and us and our life are the ones stuck in that fear. They are so afraid that they lean in and they accept us. They're part of the sin and they're part of the sinning, and they'll go to hell. Yeah. And it's all based in fear. And that's why it's so entrenched in the church, is that everybody just kept requoting what they were taught without ever looking deeper, figuring out what the context was, not ever admitting in the church that I grew up that Matthew didn't write Matthew. Or and even my grandfather, who was hellfire and brimstone, when I was like 4-ish, 5-ish, and I said, well, who made God? He said, go to bed. He didn't know. He'd been preaching his whole life. He sent me to bed. I thought that I'd done something wrong,
Yeah. Same. So I remember asking the question in youth group one time: how did Jesus pay if the cost of one sin from me is an eternity of torment? How did Jesus pay for the sins of everybody in 3 days? Like, how did he compress eternity for the billions of people who have existed, will exist, into 3 days? Like, explain this to me, please. And asking sincerely and genuinely. Yes. And I remember remember getting shut down by because yeah,
I
like
don't
what
know. We,
it's we have concocted these wild extrapolations from a handful of verses
yeah,
that are already taken out of context themselves. So it's
correct.
wild that we have just like created an entire doctrine and ideology that rules us and fears us. And really it does come back to
Yes,
that fear thing.
it does.
I've been on tour in the Midwest, and was driving through, I can't remember, Arkansas or somewhere, and
Mm.
just saw a sign hammered onto a light pole, light post.
Hmm.
There was just a white sign with like handwriting on it that just said "Fear God," like
Oh,
period, full stop, like that's it. And I was just
yeah,
like, that's like they don't even get that their that their whole existence, their whole way of life
yeah,
is coming from a place of fear.
yeah.
And I remember sermons being taught on the
Hmm.
concept of fearing God, and how, oh,
Hmm.
it's different. It's different from like the fear you feel when you like don't know if there's a boogeyman under your bed. But it's not. It's not. It is literally coming from the same place in our bodies. Like our bodies are
Right.
responding in the exact same way.
Yes,
And and it's just so sad to me that that is the
it
message
is.
that they don't even realize they're saying.
I know. And if they would take a minute to just even Google the word fear in Greek, it's more out of honor and respect and awe. It
Mm,
doesn't even mean fear. We've taken it's sort
yeah.
of like homosexual in the Bible that wasn't there until 1946. I cannot wait
Ooh,
for
yeah.
that thing to come out and for all of us to have access to it. I don't know. I don't live anywhere near all those little shows that they do and preview things, but I
Hmm.
can't wait till that hits the big screen and people still probably won't believe it and they will call it propaganda and that's just the way we want it to be. But I think it's important for our community to see it because we've been living by those fear mongers and we've been living by how the Bible has been interpreted and misinterpreted over the years. And we finally will get that clarity that that word
Hmm.
never should have been put in there. But the old
Yes.
white boys that wanted to continue the fear shut down the young intern that wanted to let them know that that's not quite the right interpretation, but yet it got
Yeah.
in there anyway in
Yeah.
1946. So, we have so much still to go through. And with the current political situation, and it almost feels more oppressive now than it did even 4 years ago.
Hmm.
Once hate is unleashed and given permission to be, it's like now we can't even go down the street without people being just ugly to each other, just in general. If even if we
Yeah.
take out the gay thing, this the energy in the world is all solely what's right for me, and I don't care about anybody else at this point. It's just
Hmm.
the feel I'm getting from the energy, and it's troublesome for me. So how do you feel? Have you seen in your own work, are people more afraid to book you for certain events? I know that even in the brewery where I live, we had Brenda the drag queen had come to this brewery several times, and Joel is an amazing brew master. I mean, he's just great, and he's always open to everybody being family.
Hmm.
And she had to be canceled one time because our Proud Boys in the area had made such a significant threat that they didn't feel like they could keep her safe or anybody else safe. So
Yeah.
have you had anything canceled or changed because of any of that activity in the world where you go?
I'm sure that there are bookings that I haven't gotten
Mm-hmm.
for that reason, but nothing that I've actually booked has been canceled. We did have to go on the defense and sue a district attorney in East Tennessee who
Ooh.
who tried to shut down that, actually, the Blount County Pride that you mentioned in the bio at the beginning there back in September. Um, that had been on the books for a long time, and I was literally moving cross country when that performance happened. I literally planned our move to pull into East Tennessee
Oh.
with the U-Haul, do my show, and then leave and keep moving.
Oh,
And
wow.
while we were in Albuquerque, I got a call from the Pride organization, Blunt Pride, and they said, "Oh, they're trying to enforce the drag ban, and we've enlisted the ACLU. Would you consider being on this lawsuit with us, it would lend some more support to have one of the performers who's being impacted by this law to have your voice on the lawsuit. And I was like, absolutely, of course, put me on there. So we sued, and we got a temporary restraining order. The lawsuit is ongoing even right now, and will ultimately determine the drag ban, because it's now been coupled with a suit out of Memphis as well. So this lawsuit will ultimately determine the status of the drag ban in Tennessee when that ruling comes down. But we got a temporary restraining order, and although there were protesters there, and police clearly, like local police, were not interested in supporting us. They had to. Ultimately, it's their job to provide the security there, and but it was not a comfortable situation by any means. But we had our pride. No one got arrested. No one was hurt. Protesters stayed in their designated area. We had our pride area, and so yeah, I'm the longer I do this, the more I know that I'm going to encounter those situations where the Proud Boys are going to show up at a show or something like that. But so far I've been, blessed and highly favored and lucky.
Good.
We've been safe. I haven't seen any altercations or anything face to face at any of my shows. So,
and that is so scary to me. It's just all scary to me, and I don't understand why we have to.
Me neither.
But this is the only thing I'm thinking, and this could be totally wrong, because I did get a BA in theology, but I found out it was just a BA in bad doctrine. So, I don't really count it. But here's my belief: is that in the Lord's Prayer, where it says, "Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," wherever that may or may not be. And my Jewish friends believe that, one, the Messiah has not come, and that we are all working together to make this a better place for the Messiah to come back to us here, and on earth will be our heaven, because it will be transformed. And so I think that if that inkling is correct, or whether the Messiah has come or hasn't come, and we'll all be surprised one day, but we are not doing the job we need to do to love. The greatest commandment, I don't care who you are or what faith you believe in, love is always the central core part of that faith or that belief. And we are not loving our neighbor. We are not loving ourselves. You've learned to love yourself in your full expression of God's glory. I've learned to love myself, and no one can put their shame on me. So we are now an extension of that kind of love that we're now putting out into the world as selflessly as we can, is that I love you as you are and as you are created to be. And that means that if you love me, you're not going to kill me, you're not going to harm me, you're not going to ban me, you're not going to be ugly to me online. And if you call yourself a Christian, which Jesus was not, by the way, he was Jewish. But if you want to be a Jesus follower, you have to love just as well as he loved. And that means that social justice, being proud of who you are, knowing that all people are accepted at the table. And if you're not doing that, then you still have a journey to do in order to get this heaven on earth ready. So we've lost the love button. And it's really hard to get that back through all the fear and all of the angst. But we're not done. We're still above ground, still breathing. And it is my mantra that as long as I'm still above ground and still breathing, I'm not done. And I'm still working for that love to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you bring it. You bring it, my friend. You bring it.
Well, I like what you said about that 1946 documentary, won't change minds, won't change every mind, right? But it's more for us, right? It's more for the people who, and that's kind of how I look at my quote unquote ministry, which again, a word it feels sticky in my mouth, but that's how I look at my ministry too. Like, I'm not here for them. I'm not here to change their minds.
That's
if it happens along the way, and it has, then great. That's fabulous. That's wonderful. But first and foremost, I do what I do for me. And that's a thing I had to be liberated from, was the idea that that's selfish, or that's, what, no. Like because when I feed myself, when I am whole, when I know that they can't put their shame on me, like you just said, then I'm liberated in a way that makes me available for other people.
Yes.
Like it
Yes.
makes my work more effective for other folks.
Yes.
And beyond that, my focus is for queer people, and specifically queer people who have grown up in oppressive, high demand religion. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I do what I
Mm-hmm.
do. That's who I do it for. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's I have no expectation that a drag queen in Christian music is gonna like suddenly like have light bulbs go on with all the gatekeepers. Like I know that's not gonna happen, but that's not why I do it.
Well, right. And yet your songs are so liberating to people. Like I heard your song Good Day after I'd come through my journey. If I had heard that song earlier and you claiming, your authentic self, and that you can come back to church and you can be in the
Hmm.
front pew and you're not
Hmm.
going to be, taken out, or that you have a right to be there. That's what I got from that song, that you have a right to be in
Hmm.
the front pew and not hide and not feel shamed.
Hmm.
You have every right because you are God's creation as well. And that,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm just telling you, I play it to myself all the time. I put it on my Instagrams or
Oh,
what.
I love it.
Maybe it's TikTok. I can't remember where I can find yours, if it's Instagram or TikTok. But there is a thing that I can download, and it's on several of mine because I just
Oh.
love that song so much. So, you know, let's I know that we're pressing a little bit of time. So what is your final thought when we think about the people behind us that haven't quite liberated themselves? They're still living in that fear. What do you want to say to those people specifically today?
You know, I don't want to put any added pressure on
Mm-hmm.
people because
Mm-hmm.
it is hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard enough to navigate your interior world when the exterior world is so hostile to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I always want them to know that there's a place for you. There's a whole community that you can't yet conceive of. And I know because I was there. I truly, genuinely believed
Yes.
if I left, if I, deconstructed my faith, if I were to go looking for progressive spirituality or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to end up in with a needle in my arm in a gutter. Like I
Yep.
genuinely believed that was the
Yep.
future that awaited me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just promise you that there is a whole community of people that you can't even conceive of yet who are going to
Mm-hmm.
embrace you, welcome you,
Mm-hmm.
become stronger companions, stronger advocates for you than you've ever experienced in your life. And the cliche, the mantra, "it gets better," is true. It gets harder too.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a lot of things, but there is a significant part of your life that improves
Mm.
when you embrace who you are meant to be, who
Yes.
who you're created to be, who you are born as, however you want to phrase it. um, if you can love yourself, then that to me is the proof that God loves you, because
Mm-hmm.
there's no separation. There's no
That's
separation
right.
between us and God, and that's the lie that has been sold to
Mm-hmm.
generations, is that we have
Mm-hmm.
to access God by whatever means, whether that
Mm-hmm.
is substitutionary penal atonement, Jesus on a cross, whether that is a church, an
Mm-hmm.
organization that has access to God, that can grant you access, those kinds of things. No, there is no separation between you and the divine. You have
Absolutely.
the divine like coursing through your veins. It is in your body, it is in your
Mm-hmm.
spirit. And um, yeah, you're so much more loved than you know.
Amen. Amen. And does Amy Grant know that she has you you admiring her from your name?
she does know. I haven't yet met her, spoken with her. I've talked to plenty of people who have, and
Uh,
who do know her, and I know that she and her team are, kind of, they've seen what's happened, obviously, and
yep.
from what I've heard, the report is that they're cheering me on, and
Good for her.
they're happy for what's going down. I know that a friend of hers actually bought one of my vinyls
Nice.
and had me sign it to her.
Aw,
So I know that
that's
she was
cool.
given. given the gift of one of my records. And when that happened, I was like, my hands were shaking. I was like, I don't know
Oh.
what to say. I'm signing this to Amy directly. What do I say?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm envisioning and putting it out there that you guys are going to do a duet at some point, and it's going to be awesome and fabulous. And Flamy will be all she is created to be. So I want to thank you. I know. Wouldn't that be the day? That would be a good day.
That would be the good. Just wait for the song I write when that happens.
That's right. That's right. I can't wait. I'm excited. So I want to thank you, Flamy, for honoring us with your story and being on the podcast. I thank you so very much for coming.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I've got things that we're going to collaborate on. Just wait till I tell you. So if you guys want to connect more with Flamy Grant, you can do so on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Threads. Flamy is available to delight you in her posts, and they are always on point with their performances. You can see all of Flamy's links on the show page, Gay with God, at empoweredmidge.podbean.com. And while you're online, check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do monthly Zoom groups entitled My Faith Journey. And I am going to be starting, instead of the Ask Me Anythings, now we're going to be starting the Gay with God book club, now that the book is out and the memoir is getting great reviews. So if you've ordered your book on Amazon or book.org or any other indie bookstore, please bring that to one of my events and I'll be glad to sign it for you. And if you will email your proof of purchase, you can get into the book club. Let's just have a great time talking about this, and I'm available to open up myself to you during the Gay with God book club. If you have your own book club and you want to use my memoir as your next read, please invite me on Zoom to join you if you are doing your book club on Zoom, or if you want to have a Zoom event, even if you meet together. And if I'm local, I'd be glad to come join you for one of your sessions, or just have a time to talk with you and ask any questions that you have. So via Zoom, or if I can get to your book club, I would love to join you for a Q&A at any point. If you are listening to this podcast and are questioning whether you can be gay and be in relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you're gay, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.